Welcome to The Buried Truth. Tonight, we're peeling back the layers of a story America tried to forget. We're digging into the cases that were intentionally buried, quietly closed, and almost completely erased from the pages of history. But among all the forgotten files, one stands out. It's a chilling puzzle that connects 3 states, 3 families, and 3 long decades of unanswered questions. This is the story of a truth that refused to stay buried. Our journey begins on a desolate stretch of highway in Nevada. Back in 1989, the sun beat down on the empty road, heat shimmering off the asphalt. It was here that a highway patrol officer on a routine patrol noticed something strange. A man was stumbling along the roadside, looking disoriented and severely dehydrated. As the officer approached, he could hear the man mumbling incoherently, repeating the same haunting phrase over and over. They're still inside the walls. The man was a ghost. He carried no identification, no wallet, not a single dollar to his name. The only thing he had was a single wrinkled photograph clutched in his hand. It was a picture of a seemingly happy family of 4, a mother, a father, and 2 young children smiling for the camera. A perfectly normal family photo. But when police tried to identify them, they hit a dead end. No missing persons reports matched their faces. No public records showed their existence. It was as if the family in the photograph had never been real. They were phantoms, captured only in that single faded image. The man himself was a mystery. Fingerprint checks brought up a few hits, revealing that the disoriented drifter had worked a series of seasonal jobs across Utah and Idaho. He'd been a ghost drifting through the rural heartland, often working near remote, isolated areas. This small clue was the first thread detectives could pull. It led them across the state line, deep into the unforgiving wilderness of Utah. There, tucked away in a forest far from any town, they found a long-abandoned hunting cabin. The air inside was stale and thick with the smell of decay. The cabin was a time capsule of abandonment. They discovered children's clothing, neatly folded but left behind. They found a pile of burnt documents in the fireplace, their secrets turned to ash. And then they made the most chilling discovery of all. Under a loose floorboard, the wood was dark and stained with what was unmistakably blood. But there were no bodies, no signs of a struggle. It's just the eerie, silent aftermath of something terrible. When detectives canvassed the area, the few locals who lived miles away had vague memories. They recalled a family living in the cabin for a short time back in the late 80s. A family with 2 kids. They kept to themselves. And then, one day, they were just gone. Vanished overnight, as if they had simply evaporated into the thin mountain air. With no bodies, no clear evidence of a crime, and certainly no suspects, the case was a dead end. It was quietly shelved, another unsolvable mystery in a dusty file cabinet. The years ticked by. The file was passed from one detective's desk to another. New investigators came in, and the old ones who remembered the strange case eventually retired. The story of the man on the highway and the family in the photo was forgotten. The case wasn't just cold. It was frozen in time, buried under decades of other crimes and forgotten paperwork, until 2017. Nearly 30 years later, an unrelated digital archiving company was working on a massive project, digitizing old, forgotten state records. As a clerk scanned through thousands of microfilm documents, they stumbled upon something familiar. It was the exact same family photograph. It's the same smiling mother, father, and 2 children. But this time, it wasn't tucked away in a Nevada evidence locker. It was inside a California missing persons file from 1988. Suddenly, the pieces of the puzzle began to slam into place. The California file told a story that had gone unheard for decades. The family had vanished while driving to Utah, where the father had accepted a new job. Their car was found abandoned near the state border, stripped of its valuables. But in the late 80s, without the tools of modern forensics, the case received little attention and quickly faded into obscurity. It was just another cold case, lost in the shuffle. The timeline now clicked. The family vanished in California in 1988 on their way to Utah. A year later, a traumatized man is found in Nevada with their picture, near a Utah cabin where a family had briefly lived. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a connection. Investigators, armed with this explosive new lead, officially reopened the hidden case. The dusty evidence from the Utah cabin was brought out of storage. The children's clothing, once a dead end, was now a crucial piece of the puzzle. Using modern DNA technology, forensics teams were able to extract a profile from the fabric. They ran it against national databases, and finally, they got a hit. The DNA matched relatives of the family who had gone missing from California all those years ago. It was the confirmation they needed. The family in the photograph was real. They were the same people who had disappeared without a trace in 1988. But this breakthrough only deepened the central mystery. What about the drifter, the man found on the highway, mumbling about people in the walls? Was he the killer, taunted by his crime? Or was he something else entirely? Detectives dug into his past, tracking down archived medical records from the years after he was found. The records painted a tragic picture. He had been treated multiple times for severe head trauma and suffered from profound psychological issues. He wasn't a killer. He was a witness, a survivor, a man who had seen something so horrifying, so deeply traumatic, that his mind shattered in an attempt to protect him from the memory. His jumbled words weren't a confession. They were a fractured cry for help. The final piece of the puzzle, the key that unlocked the entire 30-year mystery, was found not in a database or a DNA lab, but in a forgotten police notebook. An old detective working the original case in Nevada had scribbled a barely legible note in the margins of the file. It was an observation from the California police report. Neighbor seen arguing with the father. Known drifter. Left town same night. This was the ghost they'd been chasing. A man who had lived near the family in California. A man who had a dispute with them. A man who disappeared the very same night they did. Investigators pieced together his movements. He was a transient who drifted through the same remote areas of Utah and Idaho as the man found on the highway. He had followed them. He had stalked them across state lines, his anger festering. This neighbor died in 1993, taking the full, detailed truth of what happened in that cabin to his grave. While we may never know the exact sequence of events that terrible night, the larger picture was finally clear. The case was officially closed. It wasn't a conclusion that brought courtroom justice, but it brought something equally powerful. Clarity. A family, lost in silence for 3 decades, was finally identified. Their names were returned to them, their story finally told. A witness, broken and misunderstood, was finally seen not as a suspect, but as a victim himself. And a file, buried under the weight of time and indifference, was finally brought into the open. This story is a powerful reminder that even when the world moves on and forgets, the evidence remembers. The truth has a strange and persistent gravity. It can be hidden, it can be buried, but it will always, always find its way back to the light. Thank you for joining us on The Buried Truth. If you found this story as compelling as we did, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more investigations into the forgotten corners of history. We'll see you next time.